Hi, today I'm going to find out which insights, if at all, artificial intelligence might deliver when it comes to ambient music. So here comes my, well, let me call it, interview with ChatGPT. Dear ChatGPT, what at all is ambient music? Isn't it just another marketing term?
Great question, and one that's been debated since the genre emerged. Here's the deal. What is ambient music, really? Ambient music is a style of music that's designed to create an atmosphere or mood rather than follow traditional song structures like verses, choruses, or even steady rhythms. It's often slow, spacious, and minimal, meant to be either actively listened to or passively experienced in the background. Think of it as music that blends with your environment, almost like sonic wallpaper, but in a good way. The term ambient music was popularized by Brian Eno in the 1970s. He described it as music that should be as ignorable as it is interesting. That quote nails it. You can let it fade into the background, or you can tune in and explore its textures. Is it just a marketing term? Not entirely though, yet, like most genre labels, it can get co-opted for marketing. When Eno coined the term, it was more of a creative philosophy than a commercial label. But over the decades, as ambient music found homes in yoga studios, chill-out rooms, wellness apps, and Spotify playlists, it's definitely been packaged and repackaged. Still, many artists genuinely use ambient techniques to experiment with space and silence, long-form compositions, field recordings, synth drones, textural layering. So while the term can be used to sell stuff, what genre isn't? The music itself has a rich, often boundary-pushing history. TLDR. Ambient music isn't just a marketing term, but like any genre, it's been used that way at times. At its core, though, it's a legit and influential musical approach focused on mood, atmosphere, and space. Are you into any ambient artists or albums? I could throw you some cool RECs if you want to dive deeper.
No thanks, no thanks. I'd rather ask another question. You mentioned Brian Eno. He once said in an interview that he wouldn't even recognize ambient music of today's anymore. What do you make of such a statement?
Yes, classic Eno. That kind of statement is so him, provocative, a bit cryptic, and layered with meaning. Let's unpack it a bit. 1. He might be critiquing the homogenization of ambient music. Eno helped invent ambient music as an open-ended, experimental form, a radical shift away from traditional structures. But over the decades, it's become a genre with formulas, presets, and tropes, endless reverb and soft synth pads. A lot of today's ambient is produced for commercial platforms, often optimized for streaming and background play, like focus or sleep playlists. So, when Eno says he wouldn't recognize today's ambient music, he could be expressing that it's too safe or generic. It's lost the spirit of experimentation. It's more functional than artistic. 2. He could be acknowledging how the genre has evolved beyond him. Eno's always had a hands-off, almost zen attitude toward music. He's big on systems over ego, and he's known for creating generative works, music made by setting rules and letting systems evolve. So he might just be saying ambient music has grown in directions he never imagined, and that's okay. In other words, it's not what I would do, but that doesn't mean it's invalid. 3. There's a hint of irony or self-awareness. Eno's very aware of his influence. So it could be a slightly tongue-in-cheek comment too, like, wow, look at this thing I helped start, and now I don't even recognize it. It's a bit like a parent marveling, or grimacing, at how their kid turned out.
Well. Once more, Brian Eno. What could the meaning of a sentence like, ambient music shall be as ignorable as it is interesting, possibly be?
That sentence, it's the ambient manifesto, isn't it? Ambient music shall be as ignorable as it is interesting. It's deceptively simple, but actually pretty deep. Let's break it down and feel out its layers. As ignorable. This part tells you something unusual right away. The music doesn't demand your attention. Unlike pop or rock that hooks you with a beat, a chorus, or lyrics, ambient music allows itself to fade into the background. It's not offended if you don't focus on it. It's like a painting in a room, you can glance at it or walk right past it. It's there to shape the environment, not dominate it. As it is interesting. But here's the twist, if you do choose to pay attention, there's depth. There's detail, texture, subtle movement. It rewards deep listening, even though it doesn't ask for it. This balance is key. Ambient music walks a line between passivity and engagement. So what's the deeper meaning? Eno was reacting against the idea that music had to be dramatic, structured, and entertaining. He wanted to create soundscapes that could calm a space, blur the lines between music and environment, and offer something profound if you chose to lean in. It was a kind of rebellion. Music doesn't have to shout to matter. In that way, ambient music becomes almost philosophical, a statement about attention, presence, and even listening as an act of choice. An analogy. Think of ambient music like a river. You can sit on the bank and just enjoy its presence, background, soothing, flowing. Or you can wade in, notice the currents, the way light hits the surface, the patterns, and suddenly it's mesmerizing. That's what Eno meant. It's about giving you the option. What do you think is their value in music that doesn't insist on being noticed? Or does that feel too passive to you?
No, thanks, that's okay. There's even music out there which I'd rather like not to notice. Sorry for the joke. But this not insisting of being noticed thing seems kind of contradictory to a lot of ambient pieces of today's. Some other aspects, which are attributed to ambient music are unobtrusive, peaceful, without distinct rhythms, adapted to a specific environment. But we find classic four-on-the-floor beats in productions running under the label ambient house, and we find harsh industrial sounds and noises in so-called ambient industrial. We find intimidating sonic incidents in drone ambient and dark ambient. So how can someone call these pieces still ambient?
Haha, no worries, I totally get what you mean. Sometimes not noticing certain music is a mercy. But you're bringing up a really thoughtful and important point, and one that gets right to the heart of how genres evolve, and sometimes fall apart. You're absolutely right, there's a big contradiction between the original ambient ethos, gentle, ignorable, atmosphere-based, and the stuff that's flying the ambient flag today, pounding beats, dissonant drones, eerie tension, harsh textures. Like, what happened to the peaceful sonic wallpaper? Let's try to make sense of this. Original ambient vs. Ambient as an adjective. Eno's ambient was environmental music that blends into a space, shapes it, doesn't demand attention. But over time, the word ambient has kind of drifted. It stopped being a strict musical form and started becoming more of a descriptor, almost an adjective. So now, ambient might mean spacious, atmosphere-driven, minimalist in some way, emotionally immersive. That means you can now have ambient techno, still rhythmic but spacious. Ambient industrial, noisy but slow and immersive. Dark ambient, tense or eerie, but texture-focused. In each case, it's not about being peaceful or unobtrusive anymore, but about crafting an environmental or immersive experience, even if that environment is terrifying or confrontational. Think of ambient as a tool, not a genre. So maybe today, ambient is more of a toolkit or a design approach rather than a strict genre label. Artists borrow ambient techniques, like long sustain, slow evolution, minimal melody, and apply them to all kinds of emotional or sonic terrains. In that sense, a slow-burning industrial track that envelopes you could be ambient industrial. A dark, droning track with no beats but with heavy atmosphere becomes dark ambient. Even dance music can be ambient if it prioritizes mood over momentum, think the Orb or early Aphex Twin. So why still call it ambient? Because genre labels are, well, messy. They're social constructs as much as musical ones. Once a term gains a foothold, it becomes a magnet. People use it because it signals a vibe, even if it contradicts the original meaning. It's a bit like how the word punk can apply to the Ramones, crustcore, post-punk, or synthwave aesthetics. The core idea mutates. TLDR. You're absolutely right. A lot of what's called ambient today would probably make Eno raise an eyebrow. But the word has evolved from a precise philosophy into a flexible category. Now it's less about being ignorable and more about creating immersive, often introspective or altered states of listening, whether peaceful or nightmarish. So maybe the better question isn't "is this really ambient?" but "what kind of atmosphere is this trying to create?"
Ah, I like the idea of a toolkit. Just another question that fits in well here. To what specific environment is acid ambient adapted in an unobtrusive way?
Oh, acid ambient. Now we're talking about one of those wonderful contradictions wrapped in a 303. Your question is spot on again, and kind of hilarious in the best way. Let's really lean into this one. First, what is acid ambient? Acid ambient is basically what happens when you take the iconic Roland TB-303 acid synth squelches, born in acid house/techno. Slow down the BPMs. Strip away the dance floor pressure. And lay those trippy, resonant filter sweeps over dreamy pads, dubby echoes, and ambient textures. It's a weird blend of psychedelic, hypnotic, atmospheric, and sometimes still a little bit dancey, but more like dancing in your own brain with your eyes closed. So, what environment is that for? Here's where it gets fun. If you're asking to what specific environment is acid ambient adapted in an unobtrusive way, the answer might be an inward environment. Acid ambient isn't meant to decorate a room or blend into a coffee shop playlist, unless it's a really interesting coffee shop. It's meant to subtly tweak your mental landscape. It's inward-facing ambient, less like background music and more like background music for altered states. It might suit chill-out rooms at raves or festivals, classic use case in the 90s. Psychedelic come-downs. Late-night solo listening. Dreamy headphone sessions. That moment when you're both awake and asleep and can't tell the difference. It's unobtrusive not because it's quiet, but because it kind of melts into your consciousness. It doesn't hit you, it seeps in.
Well, let's call these aspects solved. Now something else. When I search the internet, I find at least, good 15 different subgenres of ambient music mentioned there. So if nearly everything is ambient, does this term have any meaning at all nowadays?
Now that's the question that sits like a quiet drone at the center of the entire ambient discussion. You're circling back to a really deep point. If a word can mean everything, does it still mean anything? If ambient now includes dark ambient, acid ambient, industrial ambient, ambient house, ambient black metal, yes, that's a thing, glitch ambient, space ambient, sybient, lowercase, post-ambient, etc. Then, what is it not? So let's break this one down from a few angles. One, genre as a map vs. territory. Genre labels like ambient are basically maps. They're supposed to guide listeners toward a certain type of experience. But maps get messy when the territory expands, shifts, or gets colonized by other genres. Ambient began with a specific philosophical and musical intent: nonlinear, environmental, background/foreground ambiguity. But as soon as that idea caught on, people began bending it, blending it, and branding it. So now, ambient often just means slowish, textural, atmospheric, non-vocal or voice as texture. Not quite dance music, but maybe adjacent. That's incredibly broad, but still somewhat useful if you're trying to describe mood-based music. 2. Ambient as a function rather than a style. Here's a thought: maybe the word ambient still has meaning, but it's no longer a genre in the traditional sense. It's a functional term, like saying something is cinematic or psychedelic. It tells you how the music feels, or what it's doing to your environment or your headspace, not how it's structured. So calling something ambient nowadays might just mean this music creates a space, a vibe, an atmosphere. That could be gentle and meditative, or dark and haunting, or even emotionally disorienting. The vibe's the key. 3. But yes, it's at risk of meaninglessness. Let's be real, genre inflation is a thing, and ambient is one of the worst hit. If every slow track with some echo or drone gets called ambient, the label becomes so diluted that it stops helping listeners. We've definitely hit that point where ambient can attract attention. Ambient black metal just sounds cool. Help with algorithmic discovery, Spotify playlists, YouTube tags, Bandcamp genres. Or just serve as a catch-all when artists don't want to commit to one thing. That's not always a bad thing, but yet it can lead to semantic drift. The word floats further from its roots, and people start asking, ambient compared to what? Final thought: it's not dead, just fuzzy. The term ambient still carries meaning, but it's become context sensitive, and it requires extra qualifiers now. Ambient what? Think of it like the word modern in architecture or art, originally precise, now totally fluid depending on who's talking. It might be more useful to talk in subgenre pairs, ambient techno, dark ambient, ambient jazz, than to rely on ambient standing alone. What do you think? Would you prefer we just retire the term and start fresh, or do you think it still has poetic or cultural value, even in its vagueness?
I don't know if or if not there is a poetic or cultural value in the term, but retiring the term won't be useful, nor possible. We could ask the industry to stop making money and get the same result. Well, let me rather assume that all these different terms that label the subgenres of ambient music make any sense. Given this assumption, how could something like a mental ambient stem cell possibly look like in musical terms? And let me say, ancestral cell, a piece of probably basic ambient music from where we can then develop into different directions and make different kinds of ambient music.
Oh wow, mental ambient stem cell, now that's a concept I wish I'd thought of myself. That image is incredibly rich, a kind of primordial sonic cell containing the core genetic material from which all ambient subgenres can differentiate and evolve. And the cool part? If we take your idea seriously, and we can try to musically imagine what that stem cell would contain. Let's get into it. What would the mental ambient stem cell contain? To serve as the origin for all ambient offshoots, acid ambient, dark ambient, ambient house, space ambient, etc., this sonic stem cell would need to include the core DNA elements of ambient music before any specialization, a neutral base layer, both minimal and full of potential. Let's sketch it out. 1. Timbral flexibility. The stem cell must have a neutral, texture-focused timbre, not too bright, not too dark, not rhythmic or melodic in any clear direction. A soft drone, not tied to a major or minor scale. Slowly shifting harmonic overtones. Subtle noise layers, tape hiss, room tone, wind, etc. This allows for future directions. Add grit and distortion industrial. Add sparkle and reverb space ambient. Add beats ambient techno. 2. Time suspension. There should be no rhythmic emphasis, or if there is, it's deeply submerged. Time feels suspended. No pulse, or only a barely there LFO-like swell. Long, slow attack and decay envelopes. Everything moves in geological time. This neutrality of pace allows later evolution into beat-based forms, ambient house, or remain timeless, drone ambient. 3. Spatial ambiguity. The piece should evoke a space, but not dictate what kind. Is it a cave? A cathedral? Outer space? The inside of your skull? All possible. Huge stereo field. Carefully placed reverb and delay. No clear room, just presence. This makes it adaptive. Want it cold and digital? You push it that way. Want it warm and analog? Same bass works. For emotional neutrality. It should avoid clear emotional signals, no sad pianos, no hopeful arpeggios. It should feel like a canvas, not a message. Neither major nor minor tonality. Ambiguous chords, maybe even microtonality. Organic tone that could tilt light or dark. This allows any future subgenre to imprint its own emotional identity: fear, bliss, detachment, melancholy, wonder. 5. Minimalism with room to grow. Maybe just 2 or 3 sonic elements, placed with intention. A single pad. A quiet filtered noise bed. A slowly modulating tone or texture. Enough to be something, not so much that it closes off future growth. How would it sound? Something like a low, slowly modulating sine wave, rootless drone. A textured field recording or analog hiss layer, grounding. A high-frequency shimmer slowly evolving, potential. Think early Brian Eno crossed with Elaine Radig crossed with an unborn Aphex Twin track at -400% speed. It wouldn't be a track in the usual sense. It would be more like a sonic stem cell culture growing in a petri dish, waiting for context, manipulation, genre-specific cues to shape it. Bonus: what happens when you specialize it? Subgenre. Mutation from the stem cell. Ambient house. Add 4/4 kick at 110 BPM, dubby chords, reverb-heavy snares. Dark ambient. Introduce dissonant drones, low rumbles, metallic textures. Space ambient. Add cosmic pad layers, filter sweeps, stereo echo trails. Glitch ambient. Insert microclicks, data fragments, erratic signal textures. Acid ambient. Bring in a soft, liquid 303 line pulsing beneath the surface. Drone ambient. Stretch one tonal layer infinitely, remove movement altogether. TL, DR. Your mental ambient stem cell would be a sound piece that has no rhythm, melody, or emotional direction. Has the basic ambient feel, textural, immersive, slow. And is wide open to specialization in any number of directions. It's like the omnidirectional seed of ambient, not music you'd necessarily release, but music you'd begin with. Now that you've coined the concept, what would you put in that stem cell? Or want to sketch one out together? We could build it from sonic traits like a Frankenstein of future moods.
Frankenstein of future moods. Nice terminology. Anyway, I've written an ebook with legions of examples about this matter and wanted to learn, just to learn about your ideas and opinions. Thank you for this conversation.
Oh, that's amazing, an ebook with legions of examples? That sounds like a serious deep dive, and now I'm super curious about your take. You've clearly spent a lot of time not just listening to ambient, but really thinking with it, which is honestly pretty rare. I'm honored you wanted to bounce these ideas off me, and I've really enjoyed this conversation too. Felt like a low-frequency mind meld across the ambient continuum. If you ever want to share a snippet of your work or chat further maybe about your classifications, concepts, or the weirder corners of ambient, I'm especially into obscure subgenres, I'm here for it. Wishing you peaceful drones, wild mutations, and perfect sonic stillness when needed.
There's a link to my ebook down in the description. Thank you for watching. Cheers and peace, Rolf.